Well, good evening to all. I think it's a good time to get started. I think some folks thought fall break started today, but we will carry on. Welcome to the Davidson Forum panel. It's religion, the arts, and meaning. Ooh. My name is Daniel Heath, and I serve as director of the Davidson Forum. I love to acknowledge the Davidson Forum colleagues that are here today. Gladys Newport, department coordinator. Thank you for being here. And Doug Otati, Craig Family Distinguished Professor of Reform, Theology, and Justice. So we are the Davidson Forum trio, as it were. The recording of tonight's panel discussion will be made available on the Davidson Forum landing page later this month. So we thank digital event staff and the technical services staff for all of your support. Thank you. What is the Davidson Forum? I get that question every single week. So we thank College Communications for helping us to produce short animated videos to answer that very question in detail. And those videos are now available on the Davidson Forum landing page. But succinctly, the Davidson Forum is a way for Davidson College and the surrounding communities to engage in with four pillars. How many did I say? Four pillars. You're going to be my class today. The Reformed tradition, liberal arts education, social ethics, and religious pluralism. The forum facilitates these engagements through speaker series, panel discussions, experiential learning opportunities like the historical walking tour, a newsletter, and a biennial symposium on Reformed Christianity and social ethics, which is planned for this academic year in February. So that is your save the date plug, February 24 and 25. Out of the four pillars, the Reformed tradition is the one that seems to be the most unfamiliar. So let's watch the Reformed tradition pillar video on the landing page right now with hopes you'll go back and watch the other three.
Hello, my name is Daniel Heath, and I have the privilege of serving as Associate Chaplain and the inaugural Director of the Davidson Forum. What is the Davidson Forum? The Davidson Forum is a new initiative for Davidson College that aims to put the college's values to work toward diverse, equitable, and just communities. Four pillars form the foundation of this effort: the Reformed tradition, liberal arts education, religious pluralism, and social ethics. Let's take a closer look at these four pillars. Reformed tradition. Imagine the Christian church as a tree. At the roots are Jesus and the disciples. After the first 1,000 years of the Christian church, two main branches diverge from that trunk: Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. Approximately 500 years later, the Protestant Reformation leads to three Christian traditions growing off the Roman Catholic branch: Lutheranism, led by Martin Luther, the Anabaptist tradition, and the Reformed tradition. The most important early leader in the Reformed tradition was John Calvin, a theologian, pastor, and lawyer. After the establishment of Reformed churches, John Knox traveled to Geneva and met John Calvin. John Knox guided Protestants in Scotland to shape their congregations according to the Reformed ideas, and so founded the movement identified as Presbyterianism. Eventually, Presbyterians from Scotland and Northern Ireland immigrated to the United States. From the beginning, Reformed churches valued education and soon began forming schools as a way of embodying their belief in the importance of serving God with all one's mind. Today, Davidson College is one of 52 colleges and universities across the U.S. established by Presbyterians. Others include Johnson C. Smith University. Thank you for taking time to learn more about the Davidson Forum. We hope you will consider joining us at one of our seminars or other learning opportunities.
So please, I was expecting a clap. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Always have to plant someone who will applaud. Thanks, Renata. Please let us know if you would like to be added to our Davidson Forum listserv by simply sending me a note at davidsonforum@davidson.edu. I'm honored to introduce to some and to present to others our panelists. for tonight's panel on religion, the arts, and meaning. And after brief introductions, each panelist will offer an opening presentation from their field and share remarks about its relationship to religion, spirituality, and/or meaning. Our panelists' presentations truly represent the engagement of the other forum pillars: liberal arts education, social ethics, and religious pluralism. I was going to ask some follow-up questions, but I think what we'll do is just jump right into Q&A to engage with the panelists. Our faculty members, some are newer, I would say. And so this is a great opportunity to get to know them, a bit of their journeys. And so we're going to jump right into Q&A after presentations, if that's okay. Tonight's program will be followed by a reception right here in the room, and we will ask that you would join us, stick around. We will open up the bar. Is that what we could call it here? Okay, we can call it the bar. Okay. And we'll have some light refreshments, so please stick around. Now for the introductions. Renata Berlin is assistant professor of the practice in music and director of choral activities, leading the Davidson College Chorale, Chamber Singers, and Choral Arts Society. Recent performances include Rossini's Stabat Mater and Craig Hala Johnson's Considering Matthew Shepard. Her training and continued studies are in both choral conducting and music education. Prior to Davidson, Renata taught in the music department at Princeton University, then worked for 4 years in Ethiopia and Tanzania. I believe Renata's choirs will participate in Wildcat Weekend as a plug. So please support the choirs. James Webb is a theater artist, scholar, and educator whose work for the last 2 decades has been devoted to creating and facilitating theater experiences for adults and youth. He has written and directed several original full-length plays, and his scholarly research has been published in several peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Webb received his PhD from New York University, his MFA from the University of Florida, and his BA from Florida A&M University. As an assistant professor of theater at Davidson College, Dr. Webb specializes in teaching acting, playwriting, and Black contemporary theater. He also directs plays for Davidson Theater's main stage season. His next production is Shakespeare's Julius Caesar in the Duke Family Performance Hall, October 23rd to 27th. It is on my calendar. And by the way, those tickets are available, so get your tickets now. Luis Sagun was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Sagun creates drawings, paintings, and sculptures and performances that confront the palpable inescapability of race and transforms art into an act of cultural and spiritual reclamation. He grew up undocumented and disconnected, and his practice is in part a response to this. As the grandson of a curandera, and he himself a practitioner, he makes art and conjures indigenous spiritualities to embody the aesthetics of personal histories, cultural resistance, and colonial disruption. Sagun received his undergraduate degree from Southern Illinois University and MFA at Northern Illinois University. I need glasses and more light up here. Help me welcome our panelists for tonight.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for including me in this evening's panel. I'm excited to be here and learn from you and get to know you all. So we were given 10 minutes to cover religion, arts, and meaning. And to be honest, it's an impossibility to dig deep into any of these aspects of our humanity.
Y'all hear okay?
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Let alone all 3 in 10 minutes, but here we go. I decided to offer some remarks on the really complex role and relationship between music and religion in the liberal arts education. The relationship between music and religion is, after all, dynamic. Sometimes they are intertwined, inseparable from one another and the culture from where it stems. Other times, music is subservient to religion. Its purpose is to elevate the religion or to educate and inspire those listening or creating the music. Other times, music and religion are completely independent or even opposing. Choral music is certainly one of the many excellent vehicles for inquiry when exploring the relationship between art and religion and how they are either constructed or complicated by one another. There's an increased sensitivity that music be understood not only as something that people do, but as ways in which people are. This understanding that identity is meaning is really important. And through dynamic and broad-reaching programming of repertoire, the liberal arts setting is a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate many kinds of meaning. But art can also easily be a source of misunderstanding, as we sometimes see in choral music. For example, the church historically patronized the arts, substantially employing composers and musicians, and is therefore an important voice in the history of choral music. But the performance of this sacred repertoire outside of the church has raised consistent philosophical and legal questions for decades, particularly in public schools. Nevertheless, much of that repertoire has gone on to have subsequent lives, sometimes as part of religious worship, but also standing on its own feet for its raw musical identity in the development of compositional styles and genre. Or perhaps it stands on its own feet because it conveys a feeling or teaches us culture and history. And to me, there is this lovely duality there, that a piece of music, whether conceived or perceived as a form of praise, can also coexist as a secular aesthetic or some combination of the both. But again, sometimes that coexistence can really feel like a tension because it can be a point of differentiation between individuals or groups. It takes a lot of intentionality, respect, effort, open minds, and open hearts to ensure that art in the liberal arts setting, public schools, and other places foster a sense of connectivity between all individuals and even strengthen connections within oneself. We don't always get it right, but I sure do see many in our fields trying. We need to call it for what it is. And that is that nobody said it would be easy because music is hardly ever neutral, especially when at an intersection with religion, and especially in choral music because we have text. Philosopher and music educator Estelle Jorgensen has suggested that a successful liberal arts component of education would be the 4 C's. That is a critical, creative, contextual, and constructivist approach to the learning of music, particularly a practice that attends to the particularities and divergences at the nexus of music, education, and religion. I do not view my role as a choir director to prescribe my understanding of meaning to any of our repertoire. Rather, it is my role to demonstrate many varying, changing, vast understandings of meaning. Students come to Davidson to become engaged global citizens, and artistic exploration, intentionality, and expression are vital in this endeavor. I've been asked to share one piece with you all this evening, and I've selected a beautiful work titled "And the Swallow" by Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Caroline Shaw. It's a cappella set for 8 voice parts. From here, I hope we might glean how the textual element distinguishes choral music from instrumental music. The religious text draws from Psalm 84. How beloved is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul yearns, faints. My heart and my flesh cry out. The sparrow found a house, and the swallow her nest, where she may raise her young. They pass through the valley of Baca. They make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. While composing the piece, the crises in both Syria and at the United States southern border were on Shaw's mind. The image of a bird trying to keep her young safe was particularly compelling. Our college's chamber choir will perform this piece in January when we go to Poland, and then in Davidson upon our return. As part of our rehearsal process, I've invited my students to consider displacement. Historically and today, we are amid unprecedented human suffering. So for Shaw, Syria and Texas were on her heart. What will it be for my students? It could be the US-Mexico border or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Ukraine. As part of our educational trip, we will visit Auschwitz concentration camp. How will this shape their meaning? Could this piece center their own experiences? Again, I cannot prescribe meaning to this piece for my students, but I can invite them and you to make space to develop our meaning together. I'll end with us giving this a listen. Thank you again for including me.
Hello, everybody. My name is James Webb, and my master's degree is in acting, and my PhD is in educational theater. And for both my master's thesis and my PhD dissertation, religion and spirituality played a very important role in both of those documents. When I was getting my MFA in acting, I was cast in a professional production at the Hippodrome State Theater in Gainesville, Florida, to play in a show called I Love You, You're Perfect Now Change. It's a musical. And I played about 14 different characters and I sang a lot of songs. I don't have that voice anymore, Renata. I do not have that voice anymore. And what was really significant was it was the culmination of my time at University of Florida, and I was to get my equity card. And for an actor who's ready to move to New York City, getting your union card is a major deal because it means that I'm eligible now to audition for Broadway shows. I can get in the room. I have an opportunity to get in the audition room. Well, about a week before rehearsals began, I got a phone call from the theater, and the theater told me that I am so sorry, but because of budget cuts and things like that, we're not going to be able to give you your equity card. And they wanted to offer me $100 a week as a salary to perform in the show. And I got really angry. I got angry. I was resentful. I was mad. And I initially said, I'm not going to do it. I can't live off $100 a week anyway during the summer. And they reached out to my major professor, and that professor figured out some way to find some school money to supplement my salary and to convince me to take the job. But when I went into the first day of rehearsal, I was still very angry, resentful, and had a lot of unforgiveness in me. And so when you're doing an equity production, a union production, on the first day of rehearsal, you have to have a meeting. And in that meeting, you choose an equity deputy. But if you're not a member of equity, you have to leave the room. And so out of that 4-person cast, I was told I needed to leave the room. And that hurt my feelings even more, right? And what I thought was going to be my thesis, which was to describe my process of building all 14 roles for this particular show and what I needed to do, how to use my technique that I had learned through graduate school. I thought that that was what my thesis, the heart of it, was going to be. What it ended up being was, how does my offstage life affect my onstage life? Because I lost my voice about the second or third week of rehearsal. And I had to have a steroid shot, but even that didn't do it. And I recognized I don't know how I recognized it, but I recognized that that anger, resentment, and that unforgiveness that I was going into rehearsal with every day was completely blocking my instrument from me being able to use all the techniques that I had learned to do the work that I needed to do. I grew up in the church. I was one of those children who my parents would drop me off because I loved church so much. They didn't go with me. I went by myself, and I went to church probably about 6 days a week, whether it was choir rehearsal or youth church or Bible study. Helped to clean the church on Saturday and certainly going to church on Sunday mornings. I loved church, and so I went often. But when I got to undergrad, I went to college, I had a divide between me and the church, and that's because I'm gay. And I had heard enough Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve sermons. I had heard enough of those sermons to make me run away. But this experience that I was telling you about with my MFA program and my getting my master's degree, that experience rushed me back to spirituality because that was the only way I knew how to deal with resentment, anger, and unforgiveness. And so I began a meditation practice and a journaling practice while I was in rehearsal for that show to try to unearth what was blocking me. And that practice is something that I still do to this day. When I received my master's degree and I started acting, I started to see that there is a correlation between theater, and I also became a playwright. And I began to ask big questions while I was writing plays. And one of the things I was trying to figure out was, what is that makes us human? And the thing that I sort of came to this conclusion with is that what separates us from the angels is that we have the capacity to experience fear, and we have to operate through fear. And then I began to look and analyze plays, and I began to see that fear, and perhaps in many different forms, whether it's shame or guilt or not feeling worthy enough, or insecurity or embarrassment, or fear being harmed or robbed, fear would show up in all these plays that I'm watching. And because of fear, that made a play universal, because we all experience fear as humans. So then when I began to write my own plays, I began to use my process of writing plays as a way to unearth my own fear and to begin to deal with it. So I recognized in my life that I had two sets of friends. I had friends who were Christian, because I grew up in a Christian church, and I identified with that, and I loved Jesus, and I had friends in that realm. And then I had friends who were not necessarily in that pocket. And those friends over here knew about my sexuality. I had come out to them, but I had not come out to these friends because I didn't have the language to articulate how I could be in love with my boyfriend at the time and how I could also be in love with God. I didn't have that language. So I decided to write a play. And that play helped me to deal with my own internalized homophobia and my own internalized shame around my sexuality. And we're going to show you some clips now of a montage of that particular play. And you have to forgive me, but because I was really into it, I decided to act in that play. So you're going to see a younger version of me in this. And here we go.
At the police visit, so there's no paper trail. You need to find a way to deposit this money in implements, otherwise it will look suspicious. You are required to stay clean, be discreet, and above all, maintain.
That's the question. What happens when a mega church pastor has a sexual desire for men and is asking what does his wife do? Well, in this play, what she does is she finds him a lover that he can have on the side so that he can have his ministry and also have his recreation, and to keep those things separate. So it's a little bit spicy. Here we go.
You will be paid in cash at the end of each visit, so there's no paper trail. You need to find a way to deposit this money in implements, otherwise it will look suspicious. You are required to stay clean, be discreet, and above all, maintain your appearance as is. Do not alter yourself.
I was hoping that we could get to know each other first. Ask questions.
Oh, so you're one of those types.
What type is that?
Meaning, conflicted.
I'm not conflicted.
Did you sign the contract?
Not yet.
Why not?
Because I'm not fully convinced that I can do this.
So then you're conflicted.
If that's how you choose to see it.
Is there another way?
I prefer to think of it as cautious.
Surely you've done this before.
No.
Bullshit.
I said no.
You never had a man take you out to dinner, tickets to see the Lion King, cocktails at intermission.
I already told you I don't drink.
So you said.
You will make amends. You will set this right.
I don't want him.
I don't care. His background checks out, he's well-mannered, he's clean, and besides, I like him.
He has an attitude problem.
So deal with it.
I don't want to deal with it. Get another one.
There is no other one. Not like him.
What about that Brazilian?
See, I think that's what this was about. I told you, he was questionable.
Well, I liked him. He barely spoke English. He smiled a lot, and plus he was quiet. That's how I like it. The less he talked, the better.
Well, can I be honest?
Oh, by all means.
I hope you don't get upset.
Carl, where'd you go? Speak your mind.
I think you're a strange woman.
Excuse me?
I don't mean that in negative sense. Quite the contrary, because I think that you're, I don't know, I think you're strange.
Well, I'm still not quite sure how I should take that.
I wish there's some other way I could say it, but I can't think of a better word.
Maybe I think strange is exactly what you mean.
Please don't be offended, all right? I certainly don't mean to be. I just think that there's something
Strange.
about you, and I'm curious about.
I see.
For example, I'm often curious to know how you could
Paul, you're about to ask me how I can allow my husband to sleep with young men, and you'd be asking the wrong question.
many women.
Suppose I were to leave my church, divorce Deborah, move to New York and get us an apartment. Would you be with me?
How big is your heart?
Oh, Paul.
That's very important. New York makes a huge difference.
What if it were a two-bedroom on the Upper East Side?
Have to be the west side.
All right, Upper West.
Balcony overlooking the park.
Of course, doorman, elevator, we have one bedroom for ourselves and a bedroom for the dog.
We can have a dog.
We can have two dogs.
So this is only hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
I don't know. It would depend.
What else would you want?
Would you still preach?
stood before my father and he married us. We signed a contract. Nothing more. This whole marriage has been nothing but one big business arrangement. I'm a work in progress, all right? I'm not a perfect man. There's a lot that I don't know. But I do know that when I'm with you, it feels right.
When am I supposed to do that?
Paul would never betray
Well, I
us.
won't be so sure about that.
Give me the letter.
Read it. And that letter speaks of details that only someone from within would know. Where is he? I want to talk to him.
Let me just say one last thing. For my PhD, I asked the question in my dissertation, why do some African Americans leave the Black church and choose not to go back? And half of my participants had left the church and half were there. I was one of those people who had left the church. It was, at the time, it was still not a place where I could feel comfortable going to wrestle with all of the questions that I have on a spiritual level. And theater has been that place for me, particularly as a playwright, to write plays that engage with questions that help me to address the particular fears that I have. And so then in doing that play, that was sort of like a coming out play for me. It was a way for me to finally be able to have language to articulate to those in my Christian circle the way that I grapple and wrestle with my love for whoever my partner is at the time, and my love for God. That's it.
Nice. I don't know if we're gonna clap again or
So-
not. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Luis Alvaro Sagun Nuño. I'm going to talk a little bit about my art practice. Maybe we could just put it in the background as I speak, just kind of rotate it. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist. One of the things, or maybe my philosophy about art, or why I enjoy making art so much, is because it really teaches me about who I am and about my place in the world. Breaking things up and rebuilding things. And we could go to the first one, please, Heath, the first image. My research for the past 4 or 5 years have been about weaving curanderismo, which is a medicine practice through different indigenous tribes of the Americas with contemporary art. So in this particular piece, I'll talk a little bit about curanderismo, but in this piece here, I titled it Lo que grita mi piel, which means that which my skin screams. And it's autobiographical. I was thinking about, I grew up undocumented. And ever since I was a little kid, I could feel that people would look at me different, or actually people would also treat me and tell me certain things. And so I didn't have the language at the time, right? Similar to how you were saying. And so for me, I just always knew that I was like spiritually disconnected to where I was. People didn't look like me, they didn't speak my language, and I felt othered. For this piece here, it's thinking about trying to make sense of the world and all the wounds that I carry. A lot of what I was thinking at the time is, truthfully, was religious imperialism, right? And thinking about, I grew up Catholic, and how the Catholic Church and the cross was really like a puppeteer, it was puppeteering me. And all of the materials that it's made out of, it's different building materials. I grew up being a construction worker, so it was important for me to use materials that I could connect with and that resonated with me. And in curanderismo, so curanderismo was born through colonization, right? So in the 16th century, when the Spanish Europeans came to the Americas, they wreaked a lot of havoc and, caused a lot of harm that to this day, I feel that I carry in my body. Curanderismo is a mixture of medicine that was born from all of the suffering that caused. This medicine comes from Africa, mostly the Yoruba and Western traditions. It comes from Spanish medicine as well. And it is also depending on the continent that we're in, depending on each tribe. So there's a lot of medicine that we use to treat certain type of illnesses. Like I was thinking about what you were saying, how like you couldn't perform because of all of the resentment and the anger and the fear, And so a lot of with colonizations, things that we carry is a lot of fear and fright from all the harm that's been caused to us. And so we carry that in this, and we believe that that illness causes us harm. So it's what causes us diabetes, blood pressure, autoimmune disorders, a lot of things that we don't know where the diseases come from. We believe that spiritual diseases inflicted through trauma is what manifests physically. So in this tradition, it's not a religion, it's a tradition of medicine and healing that's rooted in an animist practice. So believing that animals, the plants, and Mother Earth is our siblings, is our mother, and we're all interconnected, and we all have a spirit and a soul, and we tap into that for healing. In this particular piece, I made what's called a soul retrieval. So I went back in time as an adult to when I was that kid that my teachers made fun of for not speaking English correctly, for being brown. I mean, I've had teachers whisper in my ear, probably shouldn't repeat certain things, but just like, it was very like, it wasn't something that was just in the air. Like it was like strictly attacked to me. So a soul retrieval is when you have a trauma happens to you, part of your soul has that fear. And so it disassociates and it goes away somewhere. It goes to a different realm. In order to heal from those moments of trauma, you have to go into a soul retrieval. So it's a time of time travel. We call the spirit realm, and we go back into this moment when I was a kid, when I was experiencing that. And each soul retrieval focuses on something different depending on the story. And the idea is that we're reclaiming our story. So I go back in time to that 8-year-old Luis, right? Luisito, that was just a kid trying, do his best, learn a new language. And I comfort them. I hug myself, I work with my inner child, and I let that part of my spirit know that it's okay to come back to me, to be home. And then there's a sense of release. My nervous system starts to relax, and I start to close that chapter in my life and reclaim a new beautiful story so that I could keep moving forward in my life with wholeness and beauty. So a lot of these saints, we have in Catholicism, La Virgen de Guadalupe, which is Virgin Mary. And then to the left is, to the right is Santo Toribio. Santo Toribio is a saint that you pray to. That he's a saint of immigrants crossing the border. A lot of immigrants who are crossing the border pray to him for help and survival and guidance to make it to this country safely. San Martin del Porres is a saint to the left. He's the first Black saint that had been canonized by the church. So these are saints that my family has always prayed to and connected with. And this piece really is both being very critical of the church and religion, but also celebrating it. So it's like this kind of contradictions, right? Of like the beautiful traditions, but also the just the pain and suffering that comes with it. And this is also a wearable object. So that's a mask that you could wear. And I was going to do a performance, but I created this piece right before COVID. So I wasn't able to do the performance, but during my performance, I was gonna go in and wear the object. And because it's made out of like wood and sharp shards and there's nails, I was going to create a performance where I'm dancing and connecting with my ancestors, while at the same time being hurt and cut. So trying to reconcile both the destruction and the love at the same time. It's a couple of different angles. This is very similar in the way of the sculpture, but this is the drawing. It's called Magia Madre, so it's Mother Magic. And it's again thinking about learning about where in my body do I carry pain? What does that pain look like? How can I give it a voice? So it becomes like this topographical map of all my wounds that I carry, how I feel stuck, referencing colonization, the ancestors, and like, so just thinking about like just doing a body scan and thinking about where parts of my bodies need healing and what does that look like. Yeah, I think I'm done.
Renata, James, and Luis, thank you so much for your presentations. We'll now place a mic near the center of the room, and we would like for you to share your responses or questions to engage with our panelists. We have about 15 minutes, and then we will engage in reception. And I'm happy to be a runner or a walker.
For wonderful presentations and for great things to say. I want to have a kind of a question about art in different forms and context and meaning. I don't really know how to frame it. I'm just a theologian. I don't really know much about art. What I'd like to say is, I remember a long time ago, there was a Bob Dylan song, All Along the Watchtower, and then Jimi Hendrix did it. And it was all of a sudden, it was Vietnam. Everything was blowing up. Same song, somewhat different context, different meanings taken from it. I'm thinking choral music. You're saying that you can have choral music performed in church and in different places with different sort of reactions and meanings, but the music is still the music. I know it's a kind of interesting thing. Thinking of a play, what it means in your life, what it might mean in some other people's lives, and what it might mean for a church, all that sort of stuff. Thinking of these works of art, what it might mean to be someone who is from somewhere else, to have these sorts of experiences, to have them ensconced in the art. I don't know, one thing I just like, what happens if your art is viewed somewhere else, right? I mean, it's kind of, it will be, right? I mean, that's the hope, right? And what happens to meaning and how does that work? So it's just a question about context. I think everything originates in a context, but almost never stays there. And it's of some interest to me how that works, but thank you.
Directing Julius Caesar. That's going to happen during Parents Weekend, and I hope that you all will attend. And of course, there is a traditional concept of Julius Caesar, right? And we are not going in that particular direction. I am using the notion of fluidity as an anchoring foundation of the production that we're going to do. And fluidity in gender, in race, in ability, and in sexuality. And so, for example, you're going to see that the actress who's playing Brutus is female identifying, who's married to a woman named Portia, and Portia has a disability. And you're going to see that there's an eclectic array of races in the play. I've seen Julius Caesar being done more recently at the Public Theater, and the concept that they ascribed to was to make Julius Caesar look exactly like Donald Trump. And that's a concept, right? We're not going down that route. And so I guess to your question is that, yes, you know, and artists, particularly in the theater, if it's a play that's already been done, an artist will build a concept because you're always asking the question for yourself, particularly a play that's already been done, why this play, why now, what are you trying to say? And you build a concept from that. And I'm concerned, you know, I am concerned about our nation in terms of the media's coverage of how divided we are. I don't think we're as divided as the media portrays, but I am still concerned about that. And I'm concerned about what happens when any particular side of the political spectrum doesn't get their way.
will we try to use still our highest vibration to reason with each other and work through ideas, or will we resort to violence? Because I think we are still capable of resorting to violence, even though we haven't, even though we're supposed to be more enlightened as the years progress. And so that's the take that we're taking with Julius Caesar, to show what can happen when good people choose violence as opposed to their highest vibration to resolve conflict. And so, so I think when you come to see Julius Caesar, hopefully you'll see that that concept is really ringing through that. But yes, different people, different aesthetics, different ways of looking at things can take the same piece of wood and see it and use it differently. A hammer can build a house, but it can also bash somebody upside the head and kill them.
You looking at me for, you have a question? I'm just kidding. Oh, please, 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 please.
There's so much planning, intentionality, thinking that we do as artists that we don't actually share with those enacting our art often. Because I think many of us are eager that the sense of there's an agency in those enactors to go through that self-discovery themselves. And the same question is presented, I think I grapple with every single concert I do. How much do I share with my audience? And how much do we not? What do we withhold? What do we give? And I never feel like I know the exact answer. I do the best I can here. But thinking about context and how moving a piece from space to space, moving it from a choir to a choir, moving it, even shifting the same piece from English to a different language, all of these different things, and how I'm constantly grabbing. My only question or answer or reply to this is that at least I feel I'm constantly wondering, what is the right balance? What do I withhold? What do I offer my understanding of? And sometimes in sharing the historical context of a piece, biases can creep in. And how do I make sure that I know exactly where to stop? And that's on my mind. A lot, more than I let out. And this is all to say, when I go to rehearsals, we have work to do. We have singing to do. We have notes to read. We have things to figure out. What's the balance in time? What's my obligation to my students in that sense?
Thank you so much. This was just really deeply moving. I wonder, this is somewhat related to the issue of context, but also to the issue of audience. I'm a bathroom singer, I'm not trained in anything. I just sing all the time. And one time, there was a function of Diwali being organized, and the students asked me to do a devotional song for Diwali. And I agreed. And, a friend from public health prepared music, and he didn't understand what I was singing. He was just a very good musician. It was a devotional song. And then everybody in the audience started eating while I was singing the devotional song. And it felt deeply disturbing. It felt like that piece of art, that piece of devotion had been not for me as an artist. I'm not seeing myself as an artist. This was like just doing a devotional performance, but the audience's behavior, their reception of the music somehow was offensive and disrespectful. They were just eating. And that's not something you like for that particular thing, for a devotional performance. It's just not something you do. So I remember just even as a bathroom singer feeling like this was almost not really sacrilegious, but something inappropriate. Like you would never see something like that happen in India. Well, I hope not. Um, so I wonder, as artists, when you're preparing a play that is so deeply personal to you, where it's connected to your personal traumas, all of you, somebody's, the context is the war going on Palestine, Lebanon, or the war in Ukraine, or your deeply personal experiences about homophobia and yours about colonialism. How much does it matter? How much does the audience's response to your art affect what you do? To what extent does that affect your creative process? Thank you.
It just made me realize, right, like, and it's just being an artist and whatever form that takes, like, we're like sharing such deep personal stories and pain, and we're just like putting it out to the world, like to see you, right, like naked out there to the world. That takes a lot of bravery, a lot of courage, and a lot of vulnerability. um I don't know if I have an answer to exactly to like the audience. I think that what I try to do, and even in this talk and when I first meet you, and this is just the way I try to move in this world, is just to model what liberation and being yourself is and what it means to be healed. So I think that like by me just making really true and honest work and being myself every step of the way, doesn't where I'm at, whether if I'm in the hood where I grew up or here in academia or wherever, like I am my constant self. I am enough and I am healed. And I hope that even if an audience member is being disrespected, that they're seeing what like something what I find myself beautiful, and like I'm modeling it for people. So I'm just trying to always just be at that frequency and not really focus on how the work is going to get received, but just model it in every way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I totally understand how you were feeling in that particular moment, and I would probably feel exactly the same way. When I walk into a church, it does not feel like this room. If there is a vibrational frequency that is happening in sacred spaces. And for me, the theater is also a sacred space. We are when students come back from fall break, we're going to go into the Duke. For the first time, we've been rehearsing in a rehearsal studio, but we're going to go into the Duke for the first time to begin to space out Julius Caesar. And that's going to be an important moment because we're stepping from one vibrational frequency into a different one. I will tell you that personally, as an artist for myself, I am intentional about where my art happens. So I have a show that I'm directing that's on tour right now. It's called Dissonance, and the show is very particular. It needs a certain kind of vibration because it's a show about a Black woman and a white woman who've been friends for 20 years, but they've never had a conversation about race until now in the play. And so they have an explosive conversation, but they're going to come together at the end in a very truthful, authentic way. People who see that show, because we'll like we did the show in Winston-Salem, and there are people who saw the show and they're like, we need you to come here. I want you to come to my city here. And we're always intentional about, okay, where is that? What does that look like? What is that space like? Because we can't just do that show anywhere. Because if you go to a space where the vibration is not vibrating the way we need it to vibrate, then you may tend to get some results that are not what you necessarily want. So in that regard, I'm very intentional about where I'm performing, where I'm placing my art, because it is so sacred to me, to try in many ways to alleviate responses or behaviors that don't align with what it is that I'm trying to present.
Experience, and I sure hope that's not a reason to retreat back to a bathroom.
Yeah.
Look, I suppose to that I just think I can't help somebody who's not ready to listen. That's not my job. I can't help somebody who's not ready to listen. And on the other end, for every negative experience, I think maybe any of us have felt with anybody near our art. On the other end, I can add so many more where I know good has happened. And those feed me. They feed all of us. And the best ones are where you think you're putting out a product because it's going to get this reaction. And in turn, you get feedback that's completely different. And you've met somebody and connected with somebody in a gorgeous way that you never thought you could, or that you didn't know was an option. So I try to focus, this is such a simple thing, but I don't try to meet people if they're not willing to listen. And what you've said about presenting your art intentionally in terms of spaces is brilliant. Yeah.
Like disrupting certain spaces, like maybe the person who's eating, right? Well, in a couple, like, so the example is like, I'm being disrespectful and I'm gonna eat while someone's singing. How do we actually know that we didn't get to them though? Maybe it's there. I think we walk around with so much armor sometimes that people may not behave in the way that would make us feel great, right? But like just being proud the fact that you went up there, right? And like feeling that liberation. I don't know. And then I was just thinking about like, it's really super important to stay safe, right? But I'm just curious, like, what about spaces, those few people out of the sea that need to watch that play?
I think
You
it's the
know?
same thing. I think, I mean, there's a genre called space-specific theater where you might do a show in a funeral home, or you might do it in a cafeteria. But there's still an intention behind that, right? If I'm going to have a race-based conversation in a cross-race setting, I have to be intentional about where that happens, because that can go way left, you know, if I'm not thinking about how that, where to put that and where to think about that properly. But it's also like, you know, I mean, as a playwright, that may just be part of my like egoic, because when I write a play and I direct a play, it's my baby. And I don't, you know, hey, not everybody can hold my baby. You know, some parents just give them here. You tell you, not everybody can do that. Not my baby.
I think a lot of times if we do have expectations of what we're seeking from those who are with us, we have ways we can put them out and share those. There are program notes. There are just when you go to an art exhibit, when the artist wants you to look from a certain place. I mean, there's sometimes instructions come with it. And I wonder why we don't always feel empowered in a moment to just stop what's happening and say, hey, this is actually how I'd like to present my art to you. Is it okay if we please stop? And I have a feeling that everybody in that room would have respected it. But we don't always feel empowered to do it. And it's a whole nother conversation, but.
Thank you. It's not so much that I was upset. I was just talking about like the sanctity of the space and the occasion. There was something to that. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So if in a chorale performance people start eating candy and you can hear the candy wrapper, like I don't know, that just sounds like that's not the sanctity of the space or of the performance. And so I understand like being empowered, and so I appreciate the idea that, you know, you're very intentional about where something is presented. So if there is a religious occasion, Diwali, then, you know, or you versus like a Bollywood themed party, you know, those can have very different types of performances. So I do want to clarify that this was not about how I was feeling, but I felt there was like something inappropriate, almost being. Well, I don't think I create art. I'm just going to say I write equations. I'm an economist. So, so
Excellent.
but that's why I wanted to hear from the actual artists how you feel about, you know, the purpose of your art and the spaces and the people you share it with. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. I'm gonna press pause and invite all of you to engage with our panelists during the reception because I want to be respectful of their time and your time. And so let's continue this conversation during the reception. Can we just give our panelists another thank you? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will email out the recording for those are on the Davidson Forum listserv. So just send me a note. But thank you so much for being here and have a good night.